Our dear candidates for baptism, we warmly welcome you. We are all so happy to be able to share this most important occasion with you. And please know that all of us, your brothers and sisters, we love you very much. And most importantly, Jehovah, your Heavenly Father, loves you very much. Love is what has motivated you to take this step of baptism. And truth be told, love has motivated millions of people throughout the centuries to be baptized. However, for many of them, their love has been selfish. Love for what might be gained possibly by their baptism. Now, is that the case with true Christians? Is that the case with you? Absolutely not. No, we, true Christians, we dedicate our lives to Jehovah. We symbolize that dedication by means of water baptism because we love Jehovah. Yes, Jehovah offers you a reward, an incredible reward, eternal happy life. But that is not the principal motive why we dedicate our lives and worship Jehovah. And he knows that. Jehovah acknowledges that fact in his word, the Bible. One location where he makes this acknowledgement is found in Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 6. Please turn with me there to Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 6. And while we read about this unselfish love on your part to Jehovah, please notice how he responds. Hebrews 11 and verse 6. Moreover, without faith it is impossible to please God well. For whoever approaches God must believe that he is, and that he becomes the rewarder of those earnestly seeking him. Seeking him, not seeking the reward. Yes, your relationship to Jehovah is much like that of a child to their father. A child loves their father because he is their father. He loves his father and not the reward, the paycheck he might bring home each week. That love is seen by the qualities that are shown there in verse 6. See, a child has faith, confidence, belief. He looks to his father. Did you notice, though, how Jehovah responds when he sees that love and faith on your part? He becomes the rewarder. Yes, he's only too happy to reward you. Now, a love like that, a love like you have for Jehovah, has possibly not been easy to develop, and it could be a challenge to maintain. So going forward in your service to Jehovah, how can you continue or how can you strengthen your love, both for Jehovah and for others? The answer, in part, lies with Jesus. And that perhaps makes us recall the theme of this particular part. Learn to love from Jesus. Interestingly, it's Jesus himself who makes that invitation to us. That invitation is found in Matthew chapter 11. Let's look at this together. Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. And notice what is involved. Matthew 11, 28 through 30. Come to me, all you who are toiling and loaded down, and I will refresh you. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am mild-tempered and lowly in heart, and you will find refreshment for yourselves. For my yoke is kindly, and my load is light. Come to me. That's what you are doing at this time. And do what? Verse 29, learn from me. Yes, by getting baptized, you go on record that you will be a disciple, one taught by Jesus. With that, the question arises, how does Jesus teach you? How does Jesus teach any of us? What teaching method does Jesus use? Well, it's unique, And it's found right there in verse 29. Did you catch it? He says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me." What does a yoke have to do with teaching and learning? Well, if you were to tap your study note there for verse 29, you'll see illustrated a yoke to which Jesus was possibly referring. It's a bar fitted to a person's shoulders. And as you look at that illustration of a yoke, without a doubt, you will see that it has a singular purpose, that of work or of action. And that's the point. To learn from Jesus, action is required. More is required than simply watching videos on broadcasting. More is required than listening to audio recordings of our publications. And yes, more is required than reading and meditating on the scriptures. We do that. Those things are essential. But then we act. Yes, the point is to learn to love from Jesus. We have to imitate Jesus' actions. What are some of those actions that you and I could imitate? Well, let's just focus on two. And we'll start with Jesus' love for Jehovah. What would you say? What actions on the part of Jesus demonstrated his love for his Father, Jehovah? How about obedience? Obedience. And nowhere is that connection between obedience and love more clear than in John chapter 14 and verse 31. Let's read this together. John 14:31, and notice that relationship between obedience and love. John 14:31 says, "But for the world to know that I love the Father, I am doing just as the Father has commanded me to do. Get up, let us go from here." I love the Father. And did you notice what action on the part of Jesus would demonstrate to everyone that he loved the Father? Obedience. Obedience. Even when difficult, like in this case with his execution. Jesus said, "Get up, let us go from here." He did not waver. He was obedient. He loved his Father. That's the type of love that you candidates, all of us, need to develop. We can develop that love by daily acts of obedience, even in small things, so that when the big test or the big trial comes our way, you and I will be able to say, "I love the Father, and I will do just as he has commanded me." How about our love for others? What actions on the part of Jesus demonstrated his love for others? To answer this, perhaps we could return to Matthew chapter 11 and verse 30. And we'll see his actions of love in the description of that yoke. Matthew chapter 11 and verse 30. It says, "My yoke is kindly. My yoke is kindly." Can you make a yoke kindly? You absolutely can. If you recall the illustration there in the study note, did you notice what that bar, that wooden bar, had on it? Padding. It was padded. Now, I can attest to the value of that padding when carrying a load. At times in my work assignment, I'm required to carry tools or equipment on the shoulders, not by means of a yoke, rather by straps. If those straps are not padded, well, I can tell you it is going to be a very long morning or a very long afternoon for me. But if they're padded, the work is the same, but it's so much easier to bear. It is kindly. So thinking about that and thinking about our love for others, how could you and I be a kindly padded load or padded yoke for others, so to speak. We need to use the same materials that Jesus used. Did you notice how Jesus made his yoke kindly? Did you notice the materials? Mild-tempered and lowly in heart. Mild-tempered, calm, patient, positive, and refreshing. Lowly in heart, humble, and truly seeing others as superior to ourselves. Ask ourselves, do those qualities describe me? How do you answer that question? You don't. We can't. Honestly, we can't, but others can. See, if others, like in the case of Jesus, want to come to me, be in our company, well, that's an indication that we are creating a kindly yoke. Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. We've learned that by imitating Jesus' actions, we learn to love Jehovah and others. But what additional areas could we look to in regard to Jesus to help us, again, to strengthen that love for Jehovah and for others? We'll now focus on 3 qualities of Jesus, and we'll try to get practical lessons from these qualities: empathy, patience, and kindness. Jesus was empathetic. Jesus was empathetic. That's easy to say. But when we meditate on it, when we think about it, we might think Jesus was actually at a disadvantage when it came to showing empathy. Why do we say that? Well, for example, Jesus was never sick, yet he was able to show compassion and empathy toward people who were sick. How did he do it? He was able to do it because he put himself in the place of others. The lesson for us? It very well could be that a brother or sister is experiencing a problem that we have never experienced. But we can be empathetic if we put ourselves in their place. We could ask ourselves, if I was in that situation, how would I feel? Or if I had that difficulty, what would I need? Doing that, we will be empathetic. Empathy also helps us in another regard. Empathy can help us to remember or to imagine how it feels to be a non-witness. And then we will be able to show compassion to those to whom we witness to in our ministry. This is important because for you candidates for baptism, for all of us, as we try to help others in our ministry, from time to time, we will be treated badly. And we cannot respond in like manner. We cannot respond disrespectfully. But empathy, yes, remembering Jesus' words about empathy, such as Luke 6:31, where he said, treat others as we wish to be treated, then we will be able to show empathy, even when difficult to do so. The next quality, or we could say action of Jesus, was his patience. Patience. What example of Jesus' patience will help you and help myself to learn to love Jehovah and others? An excellent example is found at Matthew chapter 14, verses 13 and 14. Let's read this together. Matthew 14, verses 13 and 14, and see if you can notice Jesus' patience, his love, and the example it provides for us. It says in verse 13, at hearing this, Jesus departed from there by boat into an isolated place to be alone. But the crowds getting to hear of it followed him on foot from the cities. When he came ashore, he saw a large crowd, and he felt pity for them, and he cured their sick ones. What do we learn about Jesus' patience and his love for others? It's important that we look at the circumstances. First, in verse 13, we see that Jesus wanted to be alone. and he took steps to be alone. Why was that? Verse 13 said, at hearing this. If we're to look at the context, we see that Jesus has just heard that his close friend, his dear companion, John, has been brutally murdered. Jesus is hurt. Jesus' emotions are affected. He wants to be alone. But no sooner does he get off the boat that he's using to get away to be alone than there's the crowds. How did he react? How would you have reacted? It's good to ask ourselves, how would I have reacted in that situation? I think all of us would like to say, well, I would have reacted just like Jesus Christ. But when we look at the circumstances, everything involved, the pain he was feeling, the fatigue, spending much time with these crowds, what an example he gave us. Even though ourselves being imperfect, we might have thought to say, please, not today. Any other time, but not today. I have a lot on me. I just got some terrible news. But Jesus, he patiently gave them the time and attention they needed. Why is this a good example, a practical lesson for you candidates for baptism? For this reason. By getting baptized, you join a family, a large family of over 8 million brothers and sisters. And just like in any family, the members of that family will be wanting your time and attention. And just like in the case of Jesus, it could come at a difficult time. But following Jesus' example, we won't become provoked. We'll be patient. We'll be loving. The next quality was kindness. In Luke chapter 4 and verse 22, let's look at Luke 4:22. We'll see yet another unique way in which Jesus showed his love, his kindness. See if you can identify in which way he showed his kindness. Luke 4:22. It says, and they all began to give favorable witness about him and to be amazed at the gracious words coming out of his mouth. And they were saying, this is a son of Joseph, is it not? Amazed. It's obvious from their amazement that gracious speech, gracious, yes, kind, courteous words were not common. They are not common today. But you and I can be kind. We can have gracious speech. It won't always be easy. It can be a challenge because of the environment in which we live, the influence around us. And it can also be a challenge for another reason. See, as humans, at times, when we're speaking to people that we're close to, members of our family, members of our congregation, we might feel at liberty to speak more directly, upfront, blunt. But please remember the example of Jesus. Jesus, although he had a close relationship with his disciples, he never felt at liberty to speak harshly to them. Gracious speech as part of his kindness. His kindness was also seen in that he wasn't critical. Please turn, if you will, to Matthew chapter 7 and verse 3. Here, Jesus advises us against being critical, judging others in a critical fashion. When you find Matthew 7:3, you'll see there that well-known illustration of a person who has a piece of straw in their eye. Now, he has a piece of straw in his eye, and along comes his brother. His brother sees that straw, and he thinks that's a big deal, big problem. My brother, his spiritual vision is impaired. He can't use good judgment. Yes, he has a big fault, and I need to do something about it. Just so we understand Jesus' feeling on this matter, the advice he's trying to give us. Again, if you were to look at the study note there for Matthew 7:3, for that word straw, it's possible that Jesus was not referring to a piece of straw, but possibly to a speck of sawdust. A speck of sawdust. And that's the way it is with a person inclined to criticize others. They focus on tiny details and then judge critically based on that. Jesus was not like that. Jesus was kind. Jesus wasn't overly demanding. He didn't expect perfection of others. And in this regard, Jesus also wasn't rule-oriented. Jesus wasn't rule-oriented. See, Jesus didn't add weight, additional weight to that yoke by piling on a bunch of rules. He could have. Who could have provided or who could have made more perfect rules for every situation than Jesus? But when you and I think of Jesus, we think of kindness. We don't think of rules. Again, for you candidates, why is this a good example, a good lesson for you? Right now, your zeal is at an all-time high. You are spiritually motivated. You've no doubt set goals for yourself, and perhaps you've set rules for yourself. But we must be careful that we don't judge others because they don't abide by our rules. But we allow all of our brothers and sisters to live their life according to Bible principles. Yes, in regard to kindness, we don't criticize, we don't judge, and we don't look for the specks of sawdust in our brother's eyes. What have we learned about loving Jehovah and loving others by these examples that Jesus has given us? Empathy. The need to put ourselves in the place of others. Patience. How we need to share our time with our brothers and sisters. After all, we are a family. And kindness. Gracious speech, not expecting perfection and not being rule-oriented. Our dear brothers and sisters, you who are prepared for baptism, no doubt you have already learned many of these lessons from Jesus, and you are putting them into practice. We know that, as we stated at the outset of this particular part, you love Jehovah. You love others, and that's why you're motivated to be baptized. But please remember the urging from Jehovah found at Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 2. Let's read this, Ephesians 5:2. And notice what Jehovah is urging you to do. Ephesians 5:2 says, "And go on walking in love, just as the Christ also loved us and gave himself for us as an offering and a sacrifice, a sweet fragrance to God." Our brotherly love and the love that we feel toward Jehovah and from Jehovah is absolutely indescribable. Yet we cannot take it for granted. Go on walking in love. Go on following the example of Jesus Christ. You might think of that love or you might compare it to a campfire, a warm campfire burning at night. There's few things as pleasant as a warm fire at night. Its warmth draws people toward it. But unless those enjoying the fire continue to supply it with fuel, it will go out. Learning to love from Jesus is a lifelong process of actions, of adding fuel to your burning love for Jehovah and others. By carefully studying Jesus' life, you will learn new and practical ways to show that love. And again, to you dear brothers and sisters, you candidates for baptism, we want you to know that all of us, your brothers and sisters, we sincerely love you, and we willingly offer you our support as you continue on your life course of learning to love from Jesus.